everyone, and welcome to another episode of Annie Talks, where we bring to you interesting stories about interesting people that you want to know about. I'm your host, Annie Rivera. Thank you for tuning in, and to those who have already subscribed. If you're new to the podcast, welcome, and I hope you enjoy what you hear. And if so, I personally invite you to subscribe. Annie Talks is brought to you by Luxwear Trends, affordable, luxurious timepieces for every occasion, luxury that lasts forever, and that's what sets us apart from others. Find us on Facebook and Instagram or visit luxweartrends.com. That's Luxe weartrends.com. As you know, we've continued with the Entrepreneur series, but I also feature entertainers, performers, musicians, and creative artists, and we talk about projects that they're currently working on. Now, my next guest is not only a successful entrepreneur, but he is also a creative artist, an award-winning travel and landscape photographer based here in Los Angeles, California, Andrei Duman. Originally from Romania and transplanted in the United States, Andrei moved to New York for several years before settling here in LA, where he currently lives with his wife. He began his career as a semi-professional tennis player before moving on to investment banking. He has visited well over 80 countries so far, and while on his travels, Andrei has captured some of the most spectacular photos you will ever see, filled with unbelievable, vibrant, stunning, rich, and beautiful colors. His photos are clean and powerful and evocative, encouraging the viewers to look beyond what is right in front of them to the scale and breadth of what surrounds us. Andrei also holds unique workshops. Get this. On location in some of the most exciting and exotic locations, as well as one-on-one private instructions. And guess what? You get to select the destination. I'm excited for you to hear more about him. So without further delay, here now is my conversation with Andrei Duman. Andrei, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really, truly appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm super excited. Yay. So now for all those who are out there who've never heard of Andrei Duman and the likes of Andrei Duman, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, your background, your upbringing. I think you have quite the resume, quite the CV. So why don't you tell everybody? I'm super excited. So yeah, tell everybody, kind of give a snapshot of who Andrei is.
Yeah, thank you for that. My story is, I guess, quite interesting because I was never really meant to be a photographer. It was never sort of part of my grand plan. I never took a lesson in photography. I never went to school for photography. For me, so I was born in Romania during the lovely communist times, and that we need a whole different podcast just for that alone. But I was very much into tennis. I started tennis at a very young age, and I played a great deal when I was young. And then we moved to the UK, and I really got more and more into it. I ended up playing on the circuit and getting very, very low world ranking, but still I toured to all these sort of unique places because you need to the really strong tournaments are sort of in Germany and France and Spain. You try and stay away from those because you're just going to get killed in the first round. So then you have to go to a Brunei and a Syria and Tunisia. So I got very early on the opportunity to sort of see the world. And a lot of times I was actually traveling on my own. I was quite comfortable to travel on my own. And I always had a camera with me. I remember distinctly my first ever camera, and I say this most times when people ask me how I started out, was a 0.8 megapixel attachment to a Sony Ericsson phone. And it was incredible. I mean, you take this image, you would put this attachment to the phone and take this horrible pixelated, crazy image, and it was the greatest thing ever. And then sort of with technology, you progress and you keep buying new things. And then I got a 2.1 megapixel point and shoot, it was a Sony, and then a 3.2, and you sort of get the bug, and then you ultimately make the leap to SLR. And so through my love of travel, that I had this, desire to sort of see the more unique parts of the world. I wanted to capture that. So I always had that camera with me as much as I could, and developed my images. It was originally initially was even before that was actually on film, and then the whole digital. So then I gave up banking. I gave up tennis. It was, very difficult to keep the momentum going, and I decided I wanted to go to university. Mm-hmm. So I did my university. I did my master's in finance and investment, and then I got into investment banking, and I did 12 years of investment banking in both London and New York, sitting on the world's largest trading floors and all the crazy hecticness that went around with that. And again, they forced you to take 2 weeks out vacation, just in case you were hiding a trade, or so you had to take 2 weeks out. You had to be away from your computer, from your phone, from your emails. So again, I wasn't going to go to Mexico, that's super close by. I wanted to go far away, sort of make my time worthwhile.
Right.
So I went to a Palau, I went to a Vanuatu to see sort of these unique things that I've always wanted to see and capture. And with the progression of technology and buying new things, and I've been very fortunate enough to have gone to 80 countries right now. So that's my built into the travel landscape photography aspect of it.
Right. So, okay, let's talk. We won't talk, but the fact that you're a semi-professional tennis player, I mean, that's a whole nother podcast. We'll have to revisit that back at a time.
I have some stories. Let's just
I'm so sure, and I really want to hear about those. So, but the thing that intrigues me also is, I mean, in the short time that I've known you, just your resume alone was just very impressive. I'm already living vicariously through you. You know that. So, and the fact that you were, you visit all these locations and, countries. And I mean, it's absolutely just, amazing. And then, and I was looking through your website as well, and some of your gallery and your photography, and just what you've captured is just gorgeous. And I love
thank you.
Of course. And I love how vibrant the photos are, and then the colors just absolutely pop. So, which segues into this next question. I know that you were recently named as a brand ambassador for a company. So why don't you talk a little bit about that, if you can? Yeah.
So actually, I was an ambassador for two companies. If I may just go back a little bit further. So for the last two and a bit years, I was made an ambassador for Phase One cameras. So for those that are not familiar, Phase One is a medium format company. They have the largest commercial camera sensor in the world at the 101 megapixels. So it's this beautiful camera that just takes the most spectacular images and files. I mean, it's 16-bit of color, 15 stops of dynamic range. There's so much technology that allows photographers like myself to go out in all these amazing locations and still be able to truly capture the greatest quality files that you can get. That the use of what they have built in there really has changed the way that I look at photography. It's, going from a 35 mil, which I was before with Canon, and then moving on to medium format, it really changes your perception of photography, and it forces you to slow down. Mm-hmm. The camera can't shoot as quick as a normal 35 mil. So it really makes you think more about your composition, what you're really trying to shoot, try and find the right angle. Like I said, just really slowing down and looking up away from the viewfinder sometimes. And I think a lot of photographers just go to a location and just snap, and just go crazy. They feel like they have to constantly be shooting. Whereas, and frankly, I used to do that too. And now I go to a location and I spend the first 5 minutes, 10 minutes just looking. I just want to take it in. I want to get a real feel and a pulse for what's really happening and what am I really trying to capture here. So I'm shooting a lot less. I'm shooting more, for lack of a better word, more calculated in really what I'm trying to capture. And the camera really helps you to do that. So then you have all that data, and then that sort of segues into Again, I was very fortunate to have been made a global ambassador for ISO monitors, which I've been using for a long time. Having all that data in that file, and then being able to pull and work on that and really see the true colors that are inside that file, and even lifting up your shadows and bringing down your highlights using a monitor like the 4K, the 248X that I'm using now. It just gives you so much more flexibility and freedom in terms of knowing that what I'm about to amend is the exact same thing that my printer, for example, is going to be able to see, or it's exactly how it's going to look on my website. So it's really just giving you freedom for it.
Right. So besides the equipment and the hardware, what would you say is the secret to capturing the best image? You talked a little bit about composition and setting up and whatnot, but what is for aspiring photographers out there that need to know? What would you say is like the one most critical component to capturing, a good composition?
I think honestly for me, it's making mistakes. It's not being afraid to constantly be making mistakes. I never delete any of my files unless it's just completely all over the place. And I know that I can never save it, but I never delete my main files because and a lot of times I do look back. I want to see what kind of mistakes was I doing 10 years ago? What kind of mistakes was I doing 5 years ago? I want to see that progression. So to me, I think a lot of people are scared to show off their work because they'll get criticized. And in the internet world that we live in, social media, you can very easily, people can hide behind a keyboard and just beat you down. But you've got to let that go, and you have to just keep shooting. You have to, don't be scared to learn something new, learn a new technique, push your boundaries. I'm currently working on a project that I've never done before, and it's scary. And I'm not particularly the most patient human being on the planet. And this thing is really, really pushing my everything that I sort of conceived about photography, even me slowing down more with the phase one. And it's scary because I don't know what the end result's going to be. Yeah. But I'm doing it anyway. Even if people laugh at me or they don't like it or they don't understand it, it's only been attempted once or twice before. So that in itself is scary. But I think it's just, don't be scared to go out there and keep shooting. Every time you go out and shoot, you're going to learn something new, and you're going to make a new mistake, but then you're going to learn something different that maybe you learned about composition, or maybe you keep looking at your old files and, oh my God, that composition was terrible that I used to do 2 years ago. But now I'm playing more with rule of thirds. I'm playing more with where I want my main subject to be. What kind of aperture am I doing? What am I doing with my shutter speeds? Different technology that I'm bringing in to make my work a little bit better. In terms of equipment, obviously medium format, it is a superior product as far as I'm concerned. But in terms of just one piece of hardware, I think people should just invest in a really good, sturdy tripod. I cannot stress that enough, especially for landscapes. It's just an absolute must.
Now, there was a shot that you shared with me a few years back. Now, for those of you who don't know, Andrei and I met Andrei when I was working for that high-end display monitor company not too long ago. And at the time when we were talking about some of the future projects that we were going to be working on, you had sent to me this awesome shot, and I want you to explain it. I want you to talk about how you came to shooting this. It was of lying on the ground and shooting upwards at a structure.
The Hong Kong.
Yeah, talk about that, because I would like for the audience, the listeners, to kind of visualize this, to hear with their ears, if they would. So
and that was again. I usually set lists of things that I want to shoot. That it's part of my 3-month plan or 1 year. In the next 2 years, I want to go to this location and shoot this thing. Mm-hmm. And I do a lot of research online. I follow a lot of photographers that are my friends that are also traveling and try and get inspiration from them for what I should be doing next. And this was on my list. I saw it once over 6 or 7 years ago. I remember a tiny little picture that someone took of this location. And it really intrigued me. And I'm very much drawn to the abstract of things.
Right.
I like it when there's a pop of color in a very sort of dark image, and it just makes something come out at you. And this image sort of had that look and feel to me. And I wanted to go there and do my take on it. And I think that's something to also encourage your listeners. It's okay to go to the same location that someone's been. Just because they've shot it before, they do not own that location. It is up to you to try and go there and see what you can do differently. You might catch it's a huge space. You've got your own eye of what you want to do, what time of day, again, what aperture you're using, what shutter speed, what are you trying to do with the clouds. So for me, I really wanted to go there and I wanted to have my take on it. So unfortunately, it's in Hong Kong, and it was a layover in Hong Kong specifically to try and find it, but I could only be there for one night. So I landed very late. I was jet lagged like crazy, but I really needed to get to find this place. So I jumped in a cab. It took about half an hour by cab. And then he dropped me off because the gentleman didn't know where this thing was. I tried to show him a picture. No one knew. I asked around people. No one knew where it was. So quite honestly, I aimlessly walked around for a good 45 minutes to an hour trying to find it, trying to go into all these little tiny alleyways to look for it.
Wow.
Went the complete wrong direction. It was getting close to midnight. I was really tired. And then quite honestly, I just got lucky
Really?
and I actually found it.
Wow.
I found it by pure luck. So that's one issue out of the way now that I found it. The second thing is, okay, you're there. It looks completely different than what the image is. It's different than what you had in your mind. So you have to adjust yourself to try and figure out, okay, what's my composition? What's my angle here? What lens, what size lens am I using? Am I using super wide, or am I going to go for sort of a medium telephoto lens? So I tried a couple of angles. I tried different looks. And I found the best to actually be as wide as I could be. And at the time, that was the widest I had was a 35mm lens. But to get that extra width to it, I actually ended up being completely lying down on the floor, wrapping the tripod around my head or around my body.
Right.
And I was just going directly. I had an iPad. So the phase one, actually by Wi-Fi, you can actually live view through your iPad. And I was just firing away directly from it because I couldn't get my body was all contorted and whatever. But that's really how it ended up being. And I absolutely love that image. It's definitely one of my more popular ones that people have seen.
That is so awesome. You touched on
finished at 2 a.m.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. You touched on a point about just the physicality of how you had to the position and how you had to be able to get the shot. I mean, I did sports photography years and years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was a sports photographer intern, and then I did it for my children when they were growing up and playing sports. So part of what my one professor told me at the time is that you kind of become the athlete. So of course, I couldn't be on the mound or behind the plate batting away, to try to get the shot. So, but I understood what he meant. And when he says that, one thing you want to always focus on was the ball. So wherever the ball was is where the action was. And then in your case, the action was, to get that shot, you kind of had to become like one with the earth to get to see to appreciate and to capture the full view of what you wanted. And I think, you can't, you got to put away the ego and get down and dirty, basically. And sometimes,
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I mentioned that before. I think what I've seen whenever I'm in the field and I'm looking at other photographers, and they're constantly snapping. They're constantly firing that shutter. Right. And to me, especially with that location, I remember even though I was tired, I wanted to walk around the space. I wanted to see, to your point, you almost have to try and, obviously you can't become a location, but you have to really put yourself out there and then walk around the area, try and look up, look down, look sideways, look around a corner. Maybe there is a different look or a different angle that maybe someone hasn't seen before. Maybe you've not seen before. And to that point, it then pushes you, because then you find something that's not necessarily been done before. It's then up to your experience and your techniques that you've learned through the mistakes that I was talking about before. How do I make this work? What are the limitations of my camera? And that's actually another important point, is it's really crucial to really understand your camera. And going back to my point, keep shooting, in the sense of, don't be scared to not shoot something because of what someone might say. Keep trying to do something different, because then you learn something new about your technique, your ability, of the capability of your camera. Maybe your ISO is better at 200 as opposed to 50 for that particular experiment. Or maybe a 15 stop ND filter works better than a 10 stop, because that's more the look that you're going for. So it's just through time, it's through experience. And even if you're doing it for as long as I've been doing it, I mean, there are shots that I don't particularly like and no one's ever going to see. And no one knows the hard work that's gone into finding a location, dragging all your equipment with you, hiking up to the top of that mountain. No one's going to know that, or doing some of my aerials, getting up in that helicopter and the risk that's associated with it. But I'm always looking to learn something new, something different, something that I can then apply to something else. And that's why for the last year and a half, I've not only been traveling, but been doing a lot more studio work. So I've tried to take as much as what I've learned from my travels and my landscape and aerial photography, and how can I apply that to sort of the studio environment. Awesome. So shooting cars, shooting models, shooting watches, shooting this particular project that I'm shooting right now. It's all about how can I apply stuff that I'm already learning, and keeping up with the technology too. Technology is constantly improving.
So for those who are listening, I encourage you to go check out Andrei's website, andreiduman.com, and click around. You can check his gallery. You can see some of his reel, learn about the artist. But you'll see the shot that we're talking about, and the shot is the Hong Kong shot. What's the actual name of that shot?
It's called Up From Above.
Up From Above.
No, Up From Below. I apologize. Up From Below.
Up From Below. So everybody go check that out at andreiduman.com, and you'll see the fabulous photo that we're all talking about. Now, what keeps you motivated? What inspires you to just keep going and to get creative? And, sometimes if you need to go back to the drawing board, what keeps you inspired to do that?
Well, first of all, the planet. I think the planet, there's so much to still see and do. Unfortunately, it is disappearing in many ways that, again, needs another podcast in itself. But there's so many amazing locations. I've been very fortunate to have been to 80 countries. And there's so many. Every time I check a list, a location off my list, I tend to add another 2 or 3. So my year for 2019 is already pretty full with workshops, my own personal travels, my own shoots that I'm doing. I think what keeps me really motivated is trying to create content that, first of all, I can be proud of, that I feel like I can properly attach my name to. Because honestly, I know it's cliche, but you have to love your own work.
Yeah.
If you don't like your own work, people are going to be able to see it, because you're going to get sloppy. You're not going to, put in the time and effort to do it.
Right.
And I want to create something that's different, that's new, something that's not really been done before. How can I look at something that's been shot before and put my own twist on it? So that's really the thing that keeps me, and again, staying on top of new technology. There's some new and exciting products that are coming out that's going to help me achieve some of the things that I currently can't do with certain things that I'm shooting with. And, that's exciting, because then it just opens doors to so many other possibilities.
I hope you're enjoying this podcast episode. We'll be right back after this short message from one of our sponsors. Comfotherm thermal wraps are designed to help relieve the pain and swelling in and around the jaw, especially after wisdom teeth extractions. For more information, visit comfotherm.com. That's comfotherm.com. So I like to ask this question because I like to see, who has, where your influence comes from. So who had the biggest influence on you growing up as a child, or even today? Or could you talk about a today hero?
Probably, if I had to pick one person, it would be David Attenborough. He's
Really?
for people that don't know, it's the British explorer, I guess, if you want to call him so. But he's the gentleman he's traveled the world 50 billion times over, and he does the voiceover for Planet Earth and Life and The Frozen Planet. You name it, anything for BBC, he's done. Because he was the one really from a very young age that, watching, what was it called? The Trials of Life, I believe. I had it on VHS and just literally had it on repeat, traveling to all these incredible locations, talking about these incredible animals and creatures and landscapes. It just made me want to see the world. And he's still one of my biggest people that really influenced me. In fact, it would be on one of the people I would like to meet more than anyone. I'd love to do a shoot with him as well. Awesome. But, so he's really been sort of the main person that got me going.
So now, and then what about a childhood influence? And who could you say, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be who I am today? It's so cliche, but I feel like everybody has one of those.
It is, and I think in quite a rare case, it's still him, because he's the one that influenced me since I remember watching his TV shows when I was 4 or 5. I mean, he's been doing this since the 60s, so he's had an incredible long career. He's still the one doing it, and he does it constantly. I mean, again, obviously BBC is constantly coming out with great documentaries about the natural world. In terms of photographers, there's just so many to choose from. Michael Muller is someone I particularly love. Vincent Laforet for his aerials, I think they're really amazing, and he pushes boundaries on that front. So many other National Geographic photographers as well, that again, whenever there was a documentary in one of the magazines about a particular location, that just the imagery there was just fantastic, and wanted me to go and see those places for myself. Even if I wasn't going to shoot them, I just wanted to experience what they were experiencing. So.
Wow. And you said something just a few minutes ago about what I wanted to also ask you about, which was aerial shots. Now, some photographers, most photographers, I can't speak for all of them, but work that I've seen in the past of other artists or other photographers is the use of a drone. But you don't use a drone. You use an actual flight machine. What do you use? What do you use to get up in the air, and how do you capture those shots?
It's probably my favorite type of photography. I feel most comfortable when I'm up in the air. I use either a small plane like a Cessna, and I actually speak to the operator for me to actually take the back door off, so there's no side of the plane. It's completely open.
Wow.
Or I use a helicopter, where again the side door is completely off, and I'm leaning out of the helicopter. And it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
It is a little bit daunting, because you're in constant communication with the pilot. Because for me, everyone has their own style, and more power to you. I'm certainly not going to be the one to critique anyone. I want to shoot my images straight down, because I want to shoot it from an abstract perspective. And that's one of the reasons why I am drawn to salt flats and deserts that have that sort of, you don't really get a sense of scale, but you get these fantastic abstract lines, and you can play with that. You can either be incredibly high altitude, or you can be low. You still don't really know in some ways what you're looking at. And I kind of like that. I like the fact that it makes someone sort of stop and think, what exactly is this? Was it shot through a microscope, or wow, you're actually at 800 feet up in the air, going around in a really tight corkscrew because I need to shoot straight down. And it does get to you. I mean, even I've been doing countless flights. When you get in one of those corkscrews and I ask the pilot, okay, let's go, let's start spinning. It really goes to your head. The blood goes to your head, and you start feeling a little bit sick, and you have to take a few minutes and he does too. That's why I try and fly with the same pilot, because he knows my style. And sometimes But it's a very liberating experience because you can play with multiple lenses. You can go long, you can go wide. And it's really whatever you want it to be. It's your own playground. You know, if you're standing in front of a mountain, a vista, you can sort of take a really wide shot, and I guess you can take sort of a medium or a long lens and capture the peaks. And that's within reason. That's about as good as you can get. There's not that much more interesting to shoot. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you're in the air, first of all, you cover really wide distances. So your subject is constantly changing. But then you have your own flexibility of what you want to show. So you can very quickly change a lens, which I keep between my legs and my feet. I usually carry 2 or 3. And you change it in the air really quickly. And you're already having a completely different perspective as to what you're trying to photograph. Maybe there's a line in the sand, a natural formation that makes a really cool angle to it. Well, okay, I'll tell the pilot to hang tight for a second, just hover for a minute, we change lens. All right, let's go. Let's start spinning down. So it just forces you to sort of think differently rather than being static. And that's what I like. I like being quick.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
From that perspective.
It just sounds so adventurous and so, so ambitious. And I think that's what, I'm so drawn to just that personality and that characteristic of yours is that how ambitious you are. And it just kind of, what an adrenaline rush that it must give you.
You definitely, the last one I did was 8.5 hours of flying.
Oh,
so it was a long time. It's incredibly draining. It does take it out of you. Mm-hmm. But it's, again, like I said, and I think if there's one thing your listeners can take away is just don't be scared to do something that you're not comfortable. That is when you're going to learn the most. Being static to me personally, being static is my biggest fear because you're not moving forward.
Yeah.
Every month I want to learn something different. Every week I want to do something that's I don't know if it's going to work. I'm not even going to tell you how many studio shoots that I've done or landscape shots that I've done that no one's going to see the light of. It's never going to be shown because it just didn't work. I had this great idea that looked fantastic in my head, and I got my team around and I said, this is what I want to do. I said, okay, let's do it. And it just was a disaster. It just didn't work out. And that's okay. Because from that, I learned, actually, you know what? Next time we do something, we should try and set up the camera to do this. Or maybe we should get the C-stands to move sideways on this one, and you get a different angle and you learn something. So I think being static is the biggest fear for me. So I'm going to go the complete opposite way.
No problem. So speaking of which, what are some of them, what one challenging moment can you think of or obstacle that you can think of right now that you faced, and how did you overcome it?
Oh, goodness. From my travel or from my studio? Because they're completely different challenges.
I don't know. You pick. It's your choice.
Let's go. Actually, I'm going to choose this one because it was more recent, I guess. It was a studio shoot that I did where the idea was we were going to be shooting 4 ballerina dancers, and they were these fantastically talented ballerinas. And the idea was I wanted to, it was during the whole Me Too movement, and it was picking up, and that was very popular at the time. And I wanted to showcase that in my own way, whereby I wanted them to be body painted in each individual colors. And then we were going to have ropes that were going to represent sort of the struggles that everyone was going through, or they were being silenced, or, all the issues that some of the women and men, let's be honest, let's not leave men out, that people were dealing with from that sort of Me Too side of things. And we got the ropes and we painted the ropes a different color, and we were having them sort of binding their hands and going around their neck and their chest. And it just didn't work. The paint wasn't working. We were actually advised to use a type of paint, and actually it didn't work because it was rubbing off on the ropes. It just ended up being one of the models actually had a really bad skin reaction to the paint that was used, so we couldn't use her anymore, which threw everything off because it was a group. Anyway, the thing that I think was the takeaway from that was one of my assistants said to me, Andre, just get a black light. Just bring a black light with you. You never know if you're going to use it. It might just be there. And I decided against it. I was like, we're never going to use it. This is the idea. It's going to work out great. Mm-hmm. And last minute, we decided to actually take one along. And once we figured out that this shoot that I had in mind wasn't actually going to work and it was a disaster, we ended up shooting the entire shoot in black light. And funnily enough, the paint that was coming off them and it was rubbing off on the rope and everything, because it was fluorescent, it looked fantastic under black light.
Wow.
So, and then we found out that's actually never been shot before on a phase one. And that brought its own challenges because you had to basically shoot in complete pitch black.
Oh, wow.
You know, the phase one only has one focus point. It doesn't have multiple focus points like a 35 mil. So it was just one of those experiences where you had this idea in mind of what you wanted it to be, but then you had to quickly react to save the shoot, to save your team from being bored and save the models from losing, motivation. Mm-hmm. And you figure it out and you make it work. And it turned out to be a really, really cool, unique looking project. So
awesome.
I guess that was a good one.
Good. And where can we see that? Or are we able to see that samples?
It's on the website, on the studios. So if you go into the studio, and it's the Rope project. So it's Project Rope.
Awesome.
So people can go and see that.
So now on the flip side, what can you share with us in terms of your most memorable moment while traveling or shooting or in studio, or any of your most memorable moments? Why don't you share some of those with us, or one?
Most memorable, goodness me. Again, I've been really lucky to have done and seen a lot of things. Shooting underwater in Palau at Jellyfish Lake was incredible. Going to photographing the giant tortoises in the Galapagos was absolutely incredible to be so close to them and hear them growling and breathing. That was amazing. Doing the aerial around Bora Bora and then doing a skydive right afterwards. That's one of the things I'll always remember. I just came back from Europe and I was in Switzerland and in Austria and Germany and Italy. So going to the Dolomites and shooting the Dolomites, and it's just one of those amazing sort of vistas that you don't easily forget. Going to Namibia and going hunting with the San tribe, which is the oldest tribe in the world, was again something that it's just everywhere you go, you're gonna learn something new about the culture that you're seeing, right. The food that they're eating, the drinks, the sort of, what makes that location and those people so unique. And that's why I always encourage people to travel as much as possible. Again, even to locations that might scare you. Yes, don't go to Iraq or Syria right now. I'm not saying that, but go to Patagonia where it's a little bit, far away and it's not going to have a 5-star hotel and it is going to be cold and it is going to rain. But you get to experience something that's really, you don't see every day. And that's the stuff you remember when you're 80 years old. Those are the things that's going to stick with you.
So not only are you a world traveler, a renowned photographer, oh my goodness, you're like a historian as well, because I mean, wonderful locations and, cultural events and things that are, associated with these locations and countries. I mean, oh my gosh, we need like a whole separate podcast of so many different things now. Have you been making note of those, all the different kinds of podcasts we've been talking about?
I'm ready to go.
No kidding. I would, I'd love to just pick your brain and learn more about all your travels, even just that. So now,
so I haven't actually been traveling as much this year because I've been really focusing on some unique projects that I'm working on. Okay. In the studio. And like I was saying, this particular one, getting in collaboration with one of the leading universities in the US, as well as Alpa, which is a company out of Switzerland that make these incredible camera equipment. So I'm sure your listeners will be familiar with their photographers. It's these kind of unique projects that I'm really drawn to, and they're all very different. Again, one shooting a model, I recently did a watch shoot for Richard Mille, which, they're the incredibly high-end watch manufacturer. They make $2 million watches, $1.5 million watches, and I shot I was the first photographer, the only photographer to have shot this particular watch that we're launching. It's going to be a 1 of 20. I was the only one to get the 1 of 1. It's close to $1.2 million, and it's being launched next week. And,
Wow.
It was just, again, it's just applying whatever you've learned to something different. And if you fail, that's okay, as long as you learn something from it.
Wow, you're such in high demand. I mean, speaking of which, I mean, do you have events or appearances? Do you have workshops that we could talk about here? Where can we find you? Where can we see you?
Yeah, so in conjunction with Phase 1, I'm going to be speaking at 2 of their events that they have. Phase 1 puts together events around the country and in Europe called Standout. Mm-hmm. So Standout is going to be happening in places like Chicago and Houston and Toronto and Los Angeles. I'm going to be the one speaking at Toronto as well as Los Angeles. So definitely go on their website, and again, the events are called Standout. I'm going to be doing some speaking events on behalf of ISO as well, still to be determined. And workshops. One of the things that I do is, given my experience with all the travels that I've done, I'm putting some very detailed workshops in some of my favorite locations. So kicking off in 2019, we're going to be going to Romania, which is my home country. So I obviously know it very well and know all the tiny little secrets of where to shoot. Going back to Namibia, which is one of my favorite places to shoot. It's the variety of work from deserted towns to different cultures, the Himba tribe, the San tribe, going to Etosha National Park and doing game, and then also Bali and Myanmar. So for the time being, we're doing 4 locations. It's going to be kicking off in 2019, and you can see those at dumanworkshops.com. It's also on my website. So yeah, let's go shooting.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I want to go with you. Hello. So now for parting words, aspiring photographers, I think you touched a little bit about this earlier about never being afraid, but what other parting words, or maybe elaborate a little bit more on the types of things that photographers, what advice can you give them, things that they can hone in on?
I think understanding your equipment is really crucial. Don't be, for those that shoot in auto mode, I highly recommend for them to get off that and put it in manual and understand, once you do that, all the relationships between sort of the 3 important factors of photography, your ISO, your shutter speed, and your aperture. You're controlling all of that. And by changing one, you're affecting the other 2. And the more you do that, the more you can then add your own style to a particular photo. So I can take a photo of a landscape with the mountains in the background and the clouds looking all lovely and fantastic. And then someone else can come in understanding that relationship and then putting a 10-stop ND filter, and it makes a completely different look of the exact same location. So by pushing yourselves to learn the equipment and understanding what it can do, you then give yourself more chance to have your own style to your images. Definitely invest in a very good sturdy tripod. Mm-hmm. It will be heavy. It will be a nightmare to carry on plane, but I do not go anywhere without my tripod. Yeah. It's incredibly important. Awesome. And just don't be scared to make mistakes. Keep shooting, keep learning from it, keep speaking to other photographers, go to these events to talk to someone that you like their style and try and pick their brain. They may not all tell you, but some of the good guys still talk about it and want to give you pointers.
Yep. Now, what's one takeaway you want listeners to know and understand about Andrei Duman?
Oh, goodness. I am the kind of photographer that's not scared to shoot whatever subject, as long as I find it to be fascinating, intriguing, and trying to do something different. I don't want to be pigeonholed as a travel guy or a landscape guy or a studio guy. I want to be known as a photographer.
Right.
And always pushing the boundaries, always trying to break equipment to figure out why doing that and how to do something that's not been done before.
Now, where can we follow you? What social media sites? And besides your website, which is andreiduman.com, what other sites can we follow you on?
So my workshop space is dumanworkshops.com. Social media, you can find me on Andrei Duman on Facebook, Duman Photography on Instagram. I guess those are the main 2. that people are on Twitter. It's Duman Photography as well. So
awesome. And I will
follow me on that.
I will have all his links and all that information in the show notes below for everyone. So please be sure to click around, check out his website, and look at his reel, look at his bio, his artist, his gallery, look at all that. Because I kid you not, you will be completely blown away by his artistry. It's vibrant, it's beautiful, it's different, it's innovative, it's, especially the aerial shots. Oh my gosh, everything is just gorgeous. And I don't just throw this out there, but I think he's by far one of my favorite photographers.
Well,
definitely.
Thank you very much.
Fall in love with his work. Absolutely. Andrei, thank you so much for being on the show. I truly, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's it, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Annie Talks and getting to know more about Andrei Duman. Didn't you just love hearing about all these beautiful countries and locations he's visited? I tell you, I live vicariously through him. I can only dream of places like these, and yet he's made his dreams come true. So, so, so exciting. My takeaways from talking with Andrei are: never be afraid to try something new or something different. Take a chance. Be adventurous and ambitious. Step out of your comfort zone. This not only applies to photography or landscape photography, but every aspect in life, right? It may not be what you expected. You could have a vision of how things play out in your mind, but until you actually put words and thoughts into action, you will never know if it's successful. If it fails, so what? It fails. Learn from it, regroup, revamp, and go back out and do it again. Number 2, get out and explore. You may have a scenario of what you think you're meant to do in life, whether that's pursuing a career in technology or teaching or being a mechanic. Exploring options can lead to surprising passions. In Andrei's case, he started as a semi-professional tennis player, but through his travels as a professional athlete, he discovered his passion for photography, and now he's an award-winning, sought-after, in-demand travel and landscape photographer. I hope you found his story inspirational and motivational. I know I certainly did. Don't forget to check out Andrei's website and social media sites too. I will have all his information down below in the show notes, so be sure to check them out. Now, before we sign off, if you aren't already subscribed to my podcast, I invite you to hit subscribe and be notified anytime we upload a new episode. If you are already subscribed, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. If you could all please rate and review my podcast, please leave a comment or two. It would really help me out, and it would also help others to find this podcast. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Snapchat. I will have all the links to my social media in the show notes below. And lastly, if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider contributing to my Patreon page. Your contributions will help to further the vision and mission of Annie Talks so that we could produce more episodes like this one and many other types of episodes and topics. And the Patreon page will also be included in the show notes below. Thank you all again so much for tuning in, and keep listening to Annie Talks.
Hi guys, my name is Andrei Duman. I am an LA-based award-winning photographer, and you are listening to Annie Talks.